Iranian and Syrian state media saying that an Israeli airstrike targeted the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital Damascus. And now reports suggest that the senior commander of the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guards, Mohammed Reza Zahedi, was killed. So very significant, a high-profile member of Iran's Revolutionary Guards reportedly killed.
As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces mass protest against his leadership in an effort to oust him, it appears that Israel has carried out an airstrike in the territory of another country, Syria. And that airstrike has destroyed an Iranian embassy building in the Syrian capital of Damascus. Syria's defense ministry said that an Israeli aircraft targeted the Iranian consulate from the direction of the occupied Golan Heights on Monday. Syrian air defenses shot down some of the missiles they launched, but others made it through and destroyed the entire building, killing and injuring everyone inside, the ministry added. Now, Iran's consular building was leveled following the attack, while its main embassy building remained intact. The strike did, in fact, kill 2 Iranian generals and 5 others. The airstrikes in Syria killed General Ali Reza Zahedi, who led the elite Quds force in Lebanon and Syria until 2016, according to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. It also killed Zahedi's deputy general, Mohammed Haji Rahimi, and 5 other officers. Now, a member of Hezbollah, Hussein Youssef, was also allegedly killed in the attack, and the Iranian ambassador, Hussein Akbari, was not killed. The Israeli military declined to comment on the strike, but 4 Israeli officials, speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive intelligence matters, acknowledged that Israel had in fact carried out the attack. So we've got a few more details, which I'll get to in just a moment, but Cenk, as I'm sure you would suspect, Iran has already said that they plan to retaliate. And this, in my opinion, is another attempt by Netanyahu to further broaden this war in the Middle East, which would drag the United States into a broader war, possibly with Iran.
Yeah, 100%. So let's break it down one by one. So how many laws of war does this violate? At least 3, it appears. So they're assassinating a top military leader of a country they are not technically at war with. They're doing it in a completely different country. Both of those acts could be considered acts of war against Iran and Syria, since they struck in Syria, which again, to the right wing, I have to explain is a different country. And I have to apparently explain it to Biden and his administration too. We'll come back to them in a second. So number 3, it looks like it was a consulate building, which is another potential massive violation. Of course, the IDF says, oh, it is a government building, but not a consulate or an embassy. Why? We declared it not a consulate or embassy. Yeah, I know, you like to declare things. I don't take the Iranian government's word for it either, but I'm sure people will confirm whether it is a consulate or not. Again, Israel doesn't care and there are no consequences, but I'm just telling you the violations here. Because when Iran, of course, strikes back, you can say, oh no, you should go call on Iran to unilaterally surrender, and it's their fault for not surrendering ahead of a time for a war that Israel started. But you know what, Joe, you should, it doesn't matter.
So is Israel the only country that gets to defend itself?
Yeah, apparently. So everyone else has to unilaterally surrender to Israel forever, and they will soon occupy the entire world, but it will be your fault, and they have a right to defend themselves and dominate anyone they like. Okay, so obviously we're doing hyperbole here, back to facts. So when Iran counterstrikes, as literally any country would, whether we like it or not, then Israel and America, you can write it down in stone, will all pretend that Iran started it, when you know today Iran did not start it. This level of aggression, this level of international law breaking was started by Israel, indisputably. We're gonna get to why in a second, okay? So, but again, I don't want you to forget that, because almost all of our media will try to trick you into believe Iran started the hostilities.
So a few things I want to clarify real quick before we move on to more details about this story, which is still developing, I should note that. You mentioned the right wing and their defense of Israel. For traditionally speaking, I would agree with that take, but it's interesting to see that there are divisions within both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in regard to the US's unwavering support and commitment to Israel. I mean, it's part of what you're seeing happening over at the Daily Wire, sure, but there's the America First, MAGA crowd that does not want to continue funding and supporting Israel's war on Gaza. So I gotta mention that because the issue is actually a lot more nuanced this time around, which I'm happy to see because you have members of both sides of the political aisle actually in agreement in regard to how Israel's war on Gaza is unjust.
But I wanna be super clear about that because when it comes to the voters, the issue is enormously nuanced. Giant sections of the right wing now agree with what has always been an anti-war movement on the left. The moderates, in some weird, ironic twist, are a little bit more pro-war on both sides. And that is because they're the most brainwashed by mainstream media and mainstream politicians who are almost all unilaterally pro-war. So when it comes to the voters, it's a hot mess, but in a good way because they're defying their own politicians, okay? But when it comes to the politicians, to my knowledge, even at this incredibly late date, 100% of the Republican Party politicians at the national level are against the ceasefire.
Except for Massey.
No, Massey is complicated as well. Massey says no more funding because he doesn't want to fund anything at all ever, right?
Agreed.
Okay, and he's got his principles on that, but in his case, it actually is principles. I shouldn't do quotes, okay? He does it for everything, but it has nothing to do with Israel. He's just Dr. No on everything, okay? So, but even Massey, I don't believe, is for a ceasefire. So 100% of Republican politicians at the national level are warmongers, love war, want more war. So they could stop lying about that today, okay? Because they're tricking you, right-wingers, into thinking that they're anti-war, when in fact they're still, to this day, more pro-war than the bloody Democratic leadership that absolutely loves war.
And that includes, by the way, Donald Trump. So for the America First crowd, I would start really pressuring Trump to give you a little more clarity on where he stands and what his leadership would look like if he were to get elected and this war is ongoing. That's really, really important because he's been able to skirt any responsibility because he's not in office right now. But I have, in my personal opinion, I have no doubt that if he were in power, he would side with Israel.
That's not even close to a question. He's about to take a giant amount of money from Miriam Adelson, and he has done what Sheldon Adelson has asked him to do every time on behalf of the massively right-wing government of Israel. And in this case, again, the right wings don't match. The right wing in America doesn't necessarily want more war and certainly doesn't want to fight Israel's war on its behalf. But the right wing in Israel says, shut up. We already paid off stupid Donald Trump and stupid Joe Biden, and you will do as you're told. And those politicians do exactly as they're told. In fact, the one disagreement Trump had with Netanyahu was he thought Netanyahu was taking too much credit for the General Soleimani strike, where Trump assassinated one of the top Iranian generals. So congratulations, Donald Trump and Netanyahu. Now you have that in common. You have both murdered a top Iranian general, which is much more likely to create a giant war in the Middle East that American soldiers will have to fight and die for. So if you think Trump's anti-war, it's total nonsense. He loves this bloody war and he just says, hey, finish them earlier. Let's get to the final solution quicker for these meddling Palestinians who I want them dead and done, okay? And hey, if he doesn't agree with that position, he should goddamn clarify, because right now all he's ever said is finish them. And he's arguing with Netanyahu about who started the war in the Middle East more. So that's who Donald Trump and the Republicans are, but now turn to Biden and the Democrats. They now want to send an extra $18 billion in arms sales and weapons sales and jet sales, on top of the $2.5 billion gift that Anna's about to tell you about. So when Biden says he is criticizing Netanyahu and Israel,
it's all BS. It's all BS. It's all rhetoric. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. He thinks Democratic voters are idiots and that they'll just listen to what he says and take it at face value, and that they don't read, they don't consume the news, they have no idea what's going on in the world. We know what's going on in the world, Biden. We see it, we read it, we watch it. So he can give us all the tough talk he wants. He is in bed with Netanyahu and the far-right government of Israel. Period, point blank. Do not be fooled by anything that he has to say or verbalize. Go ahead.
Look, I just doubling out on that. he's not 99% full of crap. He's 100% full of crap.
Yes.
Because he's, I went to church, Easter, I'm such a good Christian and Catholic. And Israel, do not kill more civilians in Rafah. Meanwhile, he secretly gets them $2.5 billion, including in 2,000-pound bombs.
Yep.
And he says, murder anyone you like. Here's a free gift of American taxpayer money that I stole from them and gave to you so you could murder more Palestinians. And I'm gonna send you $18 billion more in sales, okay? But wink, I'm against what you're doing, wink. And in the midst of all this, when they asked, hey, you guys say you have a red line and all that. No, the State Department's like, no, there is no red line when it comes to unconditional funding of Israel's military.
That's right, yep.
So that means Biden is 100% liar. All of that is just theatrics meant to deceive you. And by the way, it's not just the voters. Mainstream media needs to make that crystal clear. Every time Biden opens up his mouth and lies about how he's checking Netanyahu, mainstream media needs to interrupt like they do with Trump and go, sorry, we're cutting off this press conference because the president is lying. He has sent them infinite money and says he will never, ever not send them money. Infinite obviously is hyperbole, but you understand, I'm being very serious. They should fact check him because he's a giant pathological liar and he's lying about this. They do in the articles, but they don't when they talk about the context of him chiding Israel. And then lastly, we're gonna get to at the end, this is the most important part, why Netanyahu is trying to start a broader war in the Middle East.
To maintain power. To maintain power.
I'm gonna explain the nuances.
He sees the protests, and this is what world leaders typically do when they start losing grip on power. Okay, they either expand a war, they start a war, and that's exactly what Netanyahu wants. This man is so obsessed with remaining in power. He doesn't care how many people have to die as a result of his ambitious goal to remain in power. The guy's been in and out of power in Israel forever, and he will not let go. By the way, I should also note that Israel, a wonderful democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East, of course, has just voted to ban Al Jazeera, a journalistic organization, from reporting on the ground in Israel.
Because they won't do propaganda, they're doing things that are true. They're like, we can't let our own population see what giant liars we are. Ban the media, ban free speech. And here the right wing, you're in favor of that? I thought you loved free speech. Why don't you hold a single one of your politicians accountable? That would be nice. By the way, Democrats, same of you. Don't tell me that they're such wonderful angels on the Democratic side, and you never hold them accountable as they send more and more instruments of war to Israel to kill Palestinians with our money.
So, do you want to elaborate a little bit on how this would lead to him potentially holding on to power before we move on?
So guys, what's happening right now, and we're going to tell you more about it throughout the show, is there's massive protests against Israel, against Netanyahu in Israel by Israeli citizens. So as you see us rage against the Israeli government, understand that the Israeli citizens are nuanced just like American citizens are nuanced. And a lot of them are against the Netanyahu government. We'll show you more later. But it's worse than that for Netanyahu because there's now a pincer move where the Haredi, which are the most religious fundamentalist Jews inside Israel, they are most pro-war, but they don't want to serve in the military. They say, go kill those Palestinians on our behalf, but we don't want any part of it because we're special and we're more chosen than even the rest of the Jews. So we get to do exempt because I don't want us to die. I want you to die while trying to kill Palestinians.
Think of it as a big group of Senator Lindsey Graham's, basically.
Yeah,
right?
and Joe Lieberman's and Joe Biden's and Hillary Clinton's, all the warmongers, George Bush, Dick Cheney, that's the Haredi, okay? So the fundamentalists, most pro-war, but I won't ever endanger myself crowd. So now they are demanding to keep their exemption, and there's two really important members of that group inside Netanyahu's government. If Netanyahu questions that exemption as the entire, as almost all of Israel is doing right now, then Netanyahu, then they'll quit, and then they'll have to be a new election, and Netanyahu will lose. He's getting crushed in the polling in Israel, right? But in order to keep them, if he keeps the exemption, Benny Gantz says that he will quit. In which case, again, the government falls apart. And again, Netanyahu has to go to elections, which he will almost certainly lose, and this time for good, okay? Last time he lost elections, I told you guys, You think he's gone? He's not gone. He's gonna come back, and I was right about that. This time, he would not be able to come back. He would actually be done. So in the midst of this panic, where he's got political opponents on both sides inside his government that are about to end him, he just happens to murder the top Iranian general in a foreign country. Oh golly gee, did I expand the war so that Iran has to counterstrike, and when they do, we'll all pretend that we're special victims and no one could have seen it coming? How dare they defend themselves? And golly gee, you can't get rid of a horse in midstream. We were just in the middle of this war. It would be rewarding Iran and the mullahs in charge of Iran if you did a new election now. So you have to keep Netanyahu until that war is over 10 to 20 years from now. So that's how this game is played. That's what Netanyahu is doing. So I understand all the subtleties of Iran funding Hamas to some degree, Hezbollah to a very large degree, etc. And when you start talking about who started anything in the Middle East, it goes back thousands of years. But this particular provocation is on a larger scale, and Netanyahu has done it on purpose to try to maintain power within Israel when he's deeply unpopular. So if that war breaks out, it is totally on Netanyahu's head and both Biden and Trump, which have enabled him all along.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.